It is now 1:34 p.m. on Thursday, February 3, 2022, and the meeting of the New Brunswick Traffic Commission will now commence. Due to the telephonic nature of this meeting, we will actually have a call of the roster first, just to double check everyone who is on the line, and then we'll also have an opportunity immediately thereafter for any guests, and then we will proceed into our agenda. So just calling through to see who is present. Commissioner Edwin Keefe.
Present.
Commissioner Dan Dominguez.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Valenti. Commissioner Gail Lockhart. Commissioner Michael Tublin.
Present.
Commissioner Keith Jones II. Commissioner Kenneth Abode.
Present.
And Commissioner Ivan Adorno. In addition, we have some guests, I believe. If you would mind identifying yourself, please.
Charlie Cradaville here.
Mr. Cradaville, thank you. Dan Burke, thank you.
Ed Cucci.
And Ed Cucci. Mr. Cucci, thank you. I have 3 guests thus far. Any other guests today? All right, looking at the agenda, the first item is the reports on traffic infrastructure projects. We have a variety of updates from the City of New Brunswick, from Mr. Daniel Burke. I understand the first couple items may be essentially complete, but we will look forward to hearing the update. Mr. Burke.
Livingston Avenue, and the county engineer's office is on, so step on me if I'm out of line. The physical project work is completed. I believe they're in closeout at this time. And there'll probably be a few punch list items that'll carry into the spring. Landing Lane Bridge is open. But the permanent project is, I think, scheduled for, last I saw, 2025. Excuse me on this. Joyce Kilmer Ave Phase 2 is under contract. And expected to commence in the spring, and the bulk of it in the summer due to the fact there's 2 schools. Handy Street improvements is out to bid. Bids should be received before the end of the month. It's projected to be awarded in early March, subject to DOT approval. However, it's got to be preceded by the Handy Street transmission main improvements, which continues to get pushed back as a result of the inability to obtain all the pipe materials, fittings, and valves, and so forth. Jules Lane is under design right now, projected to be a late spring project. Again, that might have some difficulty because I've been asked to add a large water transmission main to that. Stanford Avenue is under design, the roadway improvement, and we've folded in the traffic signal improvements into that project. And again, that project will also see a water main improvement. We're projecting to have that under bid late spring and be a summer project. Hopefully get most of the work away from the schools before they open back up in the fall. French East in Albany and Spring Street, again, that's a county project. It's in progress, mostly signal intersection work and concrete sidewalk work is proceeding. Rutgers Street at Livingston, the one-way request. You want to handle that, Matt, or you want to bypass it?
That one is actually in the, excuse me, that one is in the community conversation. We are, as I understand it, awaiting a petition from the affected neighborhood stakeholders that then would come to the City of New Brunswick Mayor's office and then proceed from there.
Okay. The Cancer Institute and accompanying parking deck. The Cancer Institute excavation's completed. The work is in progress. It's impacting traffic on the two side streets, Division and Hardenberg, and to a lesser degree on Somerset. The accompanying parking deck excavation's in progress, and they're looking to commence concrete work very shortly. There's a few more hurdles to get them to that point, but they're getting close. The traffic signal at Jersey Avenue and Hale, that's tied into the Valenti School project. The school project is in progress. Site work and minor foundation work is in progress. The traffic signal is under design and under the scrutiny of the county at this time. So we don't have a date for that, but I would say it's at least a year off. And the LED traffic signal upgrade is in progress. All the pedestrian signals have been upgraded at this time at the locations, and the contractor is working through changing out the traffic signal heads. I expect that'll be probably wrapped up in about say 2 weeks, give or take, depending on the weather. And that's kind of a quick overview of what we have listed here. For those of you that Matt has included, you know, I have this work impacting the right-of-ways, kind of a spreadsheet that I maintain for a working group we have, and that gives a little bit more detail and probably a few more projects that are in progress. For them, to a larger extent, the water projects, the water main transmission projects. So some of you already get that as part of your participation in that other group, but I'll make sure I provide that in the future. Any more questions, Matt?
Not at this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Burt. Now we proceed to the public comment section of the agenda. And at this time, would there be any public comment from our guests?
Yes, Charlie Cradaville, please.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Want to start by asking if the meeting's being recorded?
I would defer that to the clerk's office. I do not know the answer to that. Is there someone on the clerk's line that can answer that? If not, we can look into that and certainly find out the answer after the meeting.
Much appreciated, sir. And I do want to state for the record that New Brunswick Today is recording and broadcasting this meeting live on our Facebook and YouTube and Twitter as well. I'll attempt to do that in the future, and you know, hope that as a public service that I'll be able to do that. But I would suggest it's a best practice for the commission to record its own meetings and to share those recordings for those who aren't able to make it. As you know, the middle of a workday is difficult for some people, but I do appreciate you holding the meeting over the phone. And I think this might be your first time running the Traffic Commission meeting, so I'll say congratulations to you and wish you well, just like I did when you took over the Parking Authority. So thank you for giving me the floor. I did have an issue I wanted to raise. I'll be as brief as possible. I've been coming to the Traffic Commission meetings for well over a decade now, and was very pleased to have a real dialogue with a lot of the key decision makers about you know, traffic issues, and you know, organize people to come to the meeting in I guess it was 2011, and we had some issues with snow parking, where there was poor communication between the parking authority and the police. People were getting their cars towed and didn't have an alternative place to park them. Obviously, parking is at a premium on some of the city streets, and you know, I happen to live on Saddam Street, one of the main roads. It's a snow emergency route. I thought it would be a great idea to expand the number of decks that the authority opened and also improve that communication so that it was clear to folks where they could and couldn't park, and of course offering residents free parking during the snowstorms as a way to make it easier to plow, and also a benefit for the residents to be able to not have to shovel out their vehicles. And I do know that program continues to this day, but I do have a difficult situation here that occurred on January the 7th, the snowstorm here. On that particular night, snow fell, and I believe the parking decks were opened to residents. Unfortunately, this is the exception to the rule. Normally, I head down to the Rock-Off Hall parking deck, park my vehicle there, and get it back in the morning, or when the free parking ends. And unfortunately, I fell asleep early that night, and my car was on Saddam Street. But I woke up at 8 a.m. I, looked at the city website. I saw that the free parking had not been extended. I looked at the street. I saw all the cars were still there. So I made an assumption that because the free parking was no longer in effect and folks had to be out of the decks by 8 a.m., that there would not be any towing taking place after that. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Vehicle that I was entrusted with belongs to a friend, but was entrusted with it, was towed, as well as almost all of my neighbors. All of Saddam Street didn't see this coming, and we all had our cars towed. So that's the first issue, is that I don't think there was effective communication where if the police were going to be towing, I'm sure they could have contacted Mr. Kennedy and said, hey, we need to clear some more streets. And I have every reason to expect that the parking authority would have extended the snow parking for residents and communicated that to the residents so that folks who were, needed to move their cars had a place to take them. Unfortunately, that communication didn't happen. I do think it was a bit of a breakdown in communication. And then I also had some, troubling experiences trying to get my car back. Of course, it's, always a frustrating thing if you have your car towed, but it was made even more frustrating because the car is not in my name. So I called the police in advance. I wanted to make sure it was going to be okay for me to get the car. I was told, we can't give you the car back if it's not in your name. You'll need a notarized letter from the car's owner. The car's owner is out of state and wasn't really feasible for me to get a notarized letter from him. So I, pushed back, and I stated that the ordinance says that the owner is allowed to designate someone to be able to have the car released to them. And I indicated that, we could have a phone conversation with the owner, or, find some way for him to designate me as the person. The sergeant I was speaking to put me on hold, came back, and then told me, do you have the key to the car? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, if you're in possession of the key, you're in possession of the car. I'm happy to be able to get the car back. I didn't push back on that. I went down there. I paid my $20 to New Brunswick. Got, there happened to be quite a line of people who were all Saddam Street residents, all caught in the same situation. And, I was given the slip and was able to go pay $125 to get my car back, or to get this car back. It's an avoidable situation. I wish it didn't happen. But then it was troubling because I went back to the police station later that day for another reason, and saw some more Saddam Street residents trying to get vehicles back. And someone had a similar situation to mine, where they said they had just recently purchased the car. They didn't have the title yet. Whatever the reason was, they were being denied the ability to get the vehicle back. And so I told these folks the same thing I had been told, that, they told me, if you have the key, you can get the car back. And first of all, no one asked to look at my key, and I don't know how they would know whether I truly have the key or not without having the vehicle. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but that was what I was told by a New Brunswick police sergeant. So I do think that the city needs to clarify the procedure for getting back a vehicle that they have towed. There should be clear rules about, how one can designate someone else to to be able to retrieve and for the police to release the car to them. It shouldn't be a thing that where each person gets treated differently, or they tell you one thing, and then if you push back, then you get a different thing. It should be clear, and I don't think a notarized letter should be the requirement. That's not in the ordinance, but I do think there should be some clear system for folks who do get towed. And I think more importantly, for the purposes of this commission, is that we should stay true to what was decided, after much discussion a decade ago, and make sure that any time the police will be towing along snow emergency routes, that the parking authority offers options for people to park indoors in a structure parking deck for free, and only shut that down with advance notice to the public and once the towing is complete. I know that obviously the parking authority wants paying customers, and I don't think it would have been I don't think it would have caused you to have to turn away paying customers if they had continued the snow parking till later in the day, or even for an entire additional day. I'm not privy to the exact capacity numbers that you have in those 4 decks that you do open to the public, but I would encourage better communication with the police and crystal clear communication with the public to make sure they know when the towing is going to happen. If the ordinance says you're subject to being towed if you're parked on a snow emergency route, and the road is snow covered, which is a little bit arbitrary. It's hard to say when the road is snow covered. Some parts of the road might have snow on them, others may not. We're not privy to know when the plows came, or if the powers that be are satisfied with the plowing, or if they need to come back. And I think that this commission should revisit this issue and get a clear promise from the police department that if they're going to do any towing for snow emergency routes, that they will communicate that to the police department. I'm looking at my ticket here, which is another cost that I've incurred as a result of this. And it says that, my violation for parking on Saddam Street was at 9 a.m. So as a factual matter, that was an hour after the free snow parking had ended. Again, regrettably, I did not use the free snow parking, and I was wrong in that regard. But I also did check the city's communications to see if that was going to be extended when I did wake up at 8 a.m. And unfortunately, because there was no communication that the snow emergency was continuing, and that towing would take place, I made a decision to leave my car where it was, not having much alternative, and it was towed. And it's unfortunate because I'm not the only person this happened to. A lot of folks were caught off guard by this and did not know that. I think we need better communication, and frankly, especially in my neighborhood, we need communication to be in English and Spanish, so that folks know that they do have an alternative, and that they know when that alternative is going to stop, and they know that once that alternative stops, the police won't do any more towing. It seems like something that is avoidable and can be addressed by the folks here. And that was the only issue I wanted to speak on today, but I'm glad that the Traffic Commission's resuming meetings, and I thank you for hearing me out today, and look forward to attending and recording and broadcasting your future meetings, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cradaville, for these suggestions for the City Traffic Commission. And in fact, the commission is fortunate that we also have on our membership, our commissioners, we have a sergeant from the New Brunswick Police Department as well. So we do appreciate any suggestions for enhancement possibilities. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to give any public comments today? Final call for other members of the public who wish to give public comment. The next item on our agenda, we have, incidentally, we have no old business. However, there is an item that came just yesterday afternoon, and this is for new business, an item that was brought to my attention. It was a reported item yesterday mid-afternoon, brought to me by Mr. Daniel Burke today, shortly before the meeting. But the reported, there was another suggestion from the general public, a member of the public or resident of the city of New Brunswick, who at 1:36 p.m. on February 2 submitted a reported entry to the city that states as follows in relevant part, and this is a quote. I walk to work each day in New Brunswick, and I'm having an issue with a sidewalk. When going from the south side of Richmond Street to South Liberty Street, pedestrians are required to cross Richmond Street to access a crosswalk, use the crosswalk, and cross back over to Liberty Street. Realistically, it seems like there should be two crosswalks here, one on both sides of Richmond Street, so pedestrians don't have to go as far out of their way, end quote. And Mr. Daniel Burke has done some preliminary initial review with Google Earth and so forth, and he and I wanted to bring this to the commission for some some preliminary discussion. Of course, we will solicit input from the relevant parties, including the police and traffic and the other folks in the city departments regarding this suggestion. But essentially, it is requesting a second crosswalk to be installed in this area that was just described. Now, Mr. Burke's initial analysis indicates that this actually would effectively constitute a second crossing of Nielsen Street at Richmond. And he pointed out that if approved by the city, it would entail needing to put a curb cut in. So it's not merely painting, but there would be curb cutting done, as well as the installation of an ADA compliant ramp there at Nielsen Street. So, of course, that entails also the city hiring an outside contractor and the work commencing during the typical construction season of roughly April to approximately Thanksgiving. But we wanted to bring this to the Traffic Commission for some initial discussion, and then we can move it forward with the various stakeholders. But Mr. Burke, is there anything further that you would like to add as far as what you've found in this brief window so far?
Like I said in our discussion, Matt, I think the request, initially without full involvement or full review, it sounds reasonable. I did, like you said, a street view Google Earth look at it, and the request seems within reason. I'd have to go out there and see if the physically the curb cut and ramp could be installed to be compliant with ADA regulations before I would give a final assessment. I would also seek input from the police traffic divisions to any input, any thoughts they might have before I think a recommendation could come to move it to construction. So I would do those two things. One, I'll go out before the next meeting and assess the ability to install a curb cut and ADA ramp to meet the standards, and then I would ask the police to also, give their input, make their evaluation, give their input as to that request.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any other commissioners with comments or thoughts on this item?
This is Michael Telbert. I'm a resident right down in that area, so I know the crossing very well where they're talking about, and to go from that side of Richmond across Nielsen to where the Quincy is a little bit of a longer stretch. It's pretty well, the cars are moving quickly there, so I don't see adding another crosswalk as a great benefit to our community. It's easier to cross over at Richmond and cross over where the crosswalk is at Liberty and Nielsen, not sort of Richmond and Nielsen that they're suggesting now, would be my opinion on this. Because the traffic really is down there.
Thank you, Mr. Tublin. Just to clarify, the commenter from the report, the resident, I should say, who submitted this, mentioned, I believe, possibly mentioned, if my memory is correct, that there could be a benefit derived from this extra crosswalk to help reduce the potential for jaywalking. Do you believe that, based on what you just described, that the possibility for jaywalking would be essentially the same either way, whether there's an additional crosswalk or whether it's left as it is now?
The jaywalk's going to happen no matter what. We're in a city, so people don't necessarily always go to the corner to cross. So putting one there, might minimize it a little bit, but I just think it's just sort of, it's so short a distance from where they're speaking to where the other crosswalk is. To me, it makes no sense.
Thank you, Mr. Tublin. Do we have any other comments on this item or thoughts from commissioners? All right. What we will do to proceed is we will continue this item, and as Mr. Burke indicated, solicit further input from the police traffic folks and other stakeholders, experts from the city side of the equation as well. Now, we transition to the roundtable section of the agenda, which is traditionally a time where the various commissioners, if they desire, can provide updates regarding traffic and related matters and share anything that they may have. So I will then go through, and I myself have no update today to add to the roundtable, but I will go through each commissioner and ask to see if you would like to share anything. Starting with Commissioner Edwin Keefe, do you have any roundtable items for us?
Nothing at this meeting, Matt.
Thank you. Commissioner Dan Dominguez, any roundtable items?
Nope.
Commissioner Michael Tublin.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Kenneth Abode.
Nope, nothing to report.
I believe that is the commissioners we have presently on the meeting. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn today's meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Edwin Keefe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 2:02 p.m.
Terrific job, Matt.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.